Hey, it's Coach T, and this is another one of the Quick Code Python videos. This is a basic syntax video. So I already did one on assigning variables and on the assignment operator and on variable names and things like that, a little bit of data types. That was the Getting Started Start Here button or video for Python. In this one, this is kind of a follow-up to that because the more that I thought about it, the more I realized that I rely an awful lot on showing both printing and also reading input from the user in some of the programs that we cooperatively code a little bit later in the series. So while I'm making this one out of order, that's okay because I think it's a good thing to go back and revise. That's one of the things that we teach with young writers in my day job where I'm a teacher and a coach. We're always drafting, printing, or publishing and revising kind of all at once. So this is that method. I realized I have a gap, I need to go back and fill it in, and so this video is really for somebody who's struggling to just read input from the user and also maybe doesn't really understand the utility of the print method because it prints to the console and it's not very flashy, but it's really, really, really useful. So the big idea is we're going to cover how to print information and also how to read or capture input from the user. Talk a little bit about the pitfalls of that for console apps because, again, this is a brass tacks video series that's designed to help adult learners like myself or maybe adolescents struggling to get over the rocks and help them get to the point where they can start to build something cool on their own. If you're an advanced Python user, this is not going to be a video for you. That's okay. But anyway, if you want to support this type of head-first, practical, step-by-step approach to learning to do something cool, consider subscribing to the channel or leaving a comment or leaving a tip for another learner. That would be great. And with that said, we're going to get right into it. And our first topic to talk about in this hopefully quick video is CRUD. CRUD is a concept that I was introduced to from SQL, which was the first coding language that I started to study at the beginning of 2024, and it was really for databases. It was a recommendation from one of my brothers, and we learned about CRUD apps. And before that, I would have thought, oh, if you called my app CRUD, I would have taken that as an insult. But actually, what it means is create, read, update, and delete. And that's mostly what you're doing with a database. You're creating a database or an application, right? An instance of an application or a web page. You're reading information from the user, or you're reading information from the database, and then you're also updating it based on changes to the database or changes from the user. A couple different means of doing each of these, and you might be deleting either individual records or you might be deleting the entire database for whatever reason. So these four CRUD, these four verbs are really, really, really critical to understanding what you can do with code. And that's true of both a simple console application or something really, really complicated, way beyond my means as a learner to build myself. But the more that you start to think about, okay, is this creating, reading, updating, deleting, the more that you start to see just how integrated this CRUD concept is into writing applications. For example, right now I'm working on a text-based football game in Python. It's mostly a hobby for myself because it's almost football season here, and I got myself a new Bills shirt when we were off at one of the discount stores the other day. I like this logo, so I was like, cool. And it looks nice. It makes me look big, too. And I was thinking about classes, and I've got one simple version which uses no classes. It's just procedural programming, and I've got another version that I'm writing in C# that does use classes. And a lot of times, after the player inputs what they want, I'm reading their input, I'm then updating data stored in their class in order to track, for example, in class the field, or updating where the current line of scrimmage is, which is a variable. It's an integer within a range. So there's reading and there's also updating in that case, and that's just within a class, a simple text-based class program that exists only in the console in C# and also in Python, although no classes there. So anyway, CRUD is really, really important, and it's something you can go back to as you're writing and saying, what am I really trying to accomplish, and then what methods, what patterns, what algorithms do I know that will allow me to do which of these four verbs I really want to do. If you're using Pygame in Python, you might be creating rectangles on the screen and then updating their location, and if that rectangle represents a character or an object that's destroyed, you're deleting it, right? There's another example. So, okay, we're going to look at reading from the aspect of printing it back, right? We're going to read it from the code base. That's a print, and then we're going to deliver it to the player. And that's the print method. This is kind of the arbitrary first program that every Python and most coding users will learn, is the print hello world. So we're just going to do this as greeting equals, and then we need to do print. And notice VS Code is trying to show me all of the different methods I could call that start with these letters, which is very helpful if you're using an editor like Visual Studio Code or PyCharm or JetBrains or one of those. I'm not sponsored by any of these, by the way. I have nothing to sell you. I just want to help. So, okay, I want to print, and now it's telling me, okay, I have the values that go inside this. It's going to be an object. Oh, get out of my way. I can separate, I can end strings, I can do a new line, right? This is telling me all sorts of different things. It prints the values to a stream. Separator tells me how to add separations between values, which would be separated by either like two numbers like this, or it could be print like this. So I have one string and then I have another string. And when I'm working with strings like this, I need to concatenate or abut them together with a plus sign. I think I can also, I can do a comma as well. So that's a little bit of what the heck this window is. It's really useful as you get used to writing with it. But let's say I want to print hello, got ahead of myself, hello world, right? Now notice the syntax here. We're going to make it a little bit bigger. I've got my variable name. And in Python, I don't have to type it. It's going to infer the type when I run the code. I have the method that I want, lowercase print. If I do capital, I don't get a print. It's going to try to correct me to this. Now I get print rent. And then within the parentheses, I have an argument that I'm going to pass. And the argument is a string that says hello world. And what happens is when I run this code, I'm going to back it up a little bit. F5. I want to debug the currently active Python file. We're going to shrink this again. And now you can see it outputs to the console, hello world. So that's what the print is doing. Anything that you put in here is going to be printed to the console. And it's a very common method. This is also useful on its own if you don't want to assign the value to it. You can just print like this, and it has no value. You can't retrieve it if you want to go back and use this greeting again. Like, for example, let's delete this. What we're going to do is we're going to assign two greetings. We'll do greeting 1 equals, and we'll do hello world, and we'll do greeting 2 equals hello Chicago. I'm not in Chicago, whoops, and I need to have no spaces there, right? Now, I could retrieve the value, the string of either of these if I wanted to by saying print and then pass the name of the variable down into this. So if I do greeting 1, print greeting 1, it'll print hello world, and then it'll print greeting 1. But it won't print greeting 2 because that value is saved in the program, but it's not saved, it's not being printed or exported anywhere. So even though I'm not printing greeting 2, it's still in the program's memory. It's still in the program's memory, but I'm not retrieving it right now. I'm not reading it right now to display it. So another thing that I can do is I can add a separator to these if I want it to be a custom separator. Like, for example, let's just change greeting 2 to just Chicago, and we'll change this to city 2, just to be very clear. Naming your variables is really hard because you want it to be clear what you were doing several weeks later if you come back to the code. So I'm going to do this print city 1, print city 2, and then here I'm going to show you how the separator works inside the print, and I think after that we're going to move on to reading input. So print city 1, and we could concatenate these like this, but it's going to get in the way of the separator functioning appropriately. City 2, comma, sep equals, and you can see it highlighted up here. we could do a space like this. And if I run this, oops, if I run this, you'll see now I get New York space Chicago. If I delete the PowerShell thing and then I back up and I say New York / Chicago, I do want to be careful. If I do this, it's hard to see, but I do have an error here. It's a string literal is unterminated. What this is saying is that this is an escape character, and that means that the console, or rather the Python dynamic interpreter, will ignore whatever the next character is. So it is ignoring that sign, and now it's not closing it. I can fix that by going like this. Notice the error goes away now. Let me make it a little bit bigger. And what will happen is it's ignoring this sign, this closing quote sign that I have highlighted here. But that's not actually what I want. I could also do a / like that. Escape characters are something I might cover in another basics video. It doesn't run, I don't run into it very often, but I did run into it while I was doing my football game. I had to laugh at myself because I had this issue and it wasn't highlighting for some reason. And I ended up having to go back and debug it on my own and figure that out. So I'm going to do / like that. It doesn't seem to upset Python very much. Back up, and now I should have New York and Chicago. New York / Chicago. There you go. New York / Chicago, just like that. So that's printing. I don't think I'm going to go any deeper into printing right now. There are other arguments that you can add into print. You've got the ending, you've got file. I don't actually know what flush is. That one's new to me. But ending, we could say, we always wanted to end on a new line, and that is a lot like C#'s write line, not print line, write line in C# versus just the typical write. So let's back up. We're going to get rid of this. And pause the video here. And what I want you to do is I want you to create a statement that greets you. So put your name in like this. Name equals whatever your name is. And then I want you to input your own city, whatever that is, and then print a greeting to yourself somehow. Those are the three components I'll show you. But just as a little bit of practice, see if you can declare and initialize a variable here and then use it to concatenate or to abut them together into a print string using not the string literals but the variable names. And maybe even play with the separator and the end if you want. And maybe even play with the end if you want to mess with that parameter. So okay, we're going to move on to reading input now from the user, and that is done with this method here, input, which you may have seen me do in other videos, but we're going to talk about what exactly it's doing. We're going to be a little bit more careful with what it's doing than I was in other videos. So input on its own allows the user, it pauses the runtime and it allows the user to type something in, and it's waiting for the user to hit enter. Right now, anything that the user types in is not going to be connected to a variable. It's just going to read it and then move on. Python gets amnesia. So whenever we use input, unless we're only using it just to pause the program so that they hit enter, although they wouldn't necessarily know to hit enter, we want to tie it to a variable. And I like to call it either user input, like this, or in C# I call it read result, the result of the read, because in C# it's called read or read line, read key, something like that. So that's the verb. And what this is doing is, again, now it's going to take this input and it's going to tie it to this variable so that you can retrieve it and use it to create, read, update, etc. So one thing to be aware of is that all input is initially stored as a string literal with whatever symbols or characters input. So if I do something like, let's run it so you can see it. Right now there's no command. It's not telling me what to do. But if I do something like 55555, that is not going in as the number 5,555,555. That is going in as the 5 alphanumeric digits with no numerical value. Same thing if I just do these signs. Those have no numerical value, but also they have no information as far as letters go, unless it's hiding a 4-letter word, if you know what I mean. So what you need to be aware of when you're developing your software is if you're going to take in a read or an input and you want to check it for value, like let's say we want to develop a very simple calculator, we have to typecast or convert these data types. And I have a video on that, so I'm not going to go into it in great detail, but it might look something like int and then wrap around like that, and now it will attempt to convert whatever the user inputs into an integer. You could do it with a float, you could do it with a byte, and a long, a short, you could do it with a bool, but then we're getting into truthy and falsy values, and that's a little bit outside the purview of this series, I think. So another neat thing that you can do with the input is you can type in a command right here. So if we said hit enter and space, that way, because this is going to end this particular string, so whatever the user inputs would be sitting like right here. It's going to look weird. You want to make sure there's a space, maybe 2. And now if I run it, it'll give the user, come back, it will give the user a command, which is neat because in C#, which is the other language I have the most experience with, you have to do 2 commands to get it there, 2 lines. Python lets you put whatever you want in there, and then I don't know if under the hood it overrides this and stores this as read result instead, but it's just simpler. That's the nice thing about Python. It's simpler. If I hit enter, everything is stored as a string. If I hit enter, the actual value of read result will become this, an empty string. Not this, but an empty string. And you can actually check for that as a data validation technique by saying, if read result is exactly equal to this, then do something, right? At the moment, we don't have that, but that's a common method for making sure that there's a valid entry before moving on into the program so that you don't cause issues later on. So let's go back. Let's get our input back on there. Hit enter. And then let me show you what you can do with the read method by having you export, or rather print, read back to the console, whatever it was that the user typed. So we'll do greetings, space, and then plus read result. And we'll just do type your name. Very, very simple program here. And all that's going to happen is it will ask me to type my name. It will store whatever I type up until I hit enter as the read result variable, as a string literal. And then it's going to print greetings and concatenate that with the value of read result. So let's run that real quick. Type your name, Coach T, and notice it's waiting. I could keep going, I could pause, I could walk away, I could take a sip of coffee. Doesn't care until I hit enter. And as soon as I hit enter, it's going to concatenate that with greetings. So here is a quick thing that you should try to do on your own. See if you can create a couple of short programs, maybe 10 lines or less, that use reading inputs for different variables. Maybe take now your name as an input, put it into a properly named variable, like name, city, maybe your parents or your kids' names, or your favorite hobby, and then put that into a print statement of some sort. And if you want a real bonus, if you want a real challenge, try to use an if, elif, or else tree, or a match case tree to filter the results. And for extra bonus points, see if you can figure out what you would need to do to validate this before you move into an if, elif, else. And I will pause the video real quickly and I'll show you what that might look like. So go ahead, give it a shot. Okay, so I said that I like to store things, everything as read result, and that's because I know it's going to get overwritten. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if read result does not equal an empty string. Oops. Then I'm going to name this name equals read result. Right? I keep having to not hit semicolons. So that will, this on its own is going to backfire if we hit enter. It's going to go, oh, it does not, or it is exactly equal to an empty string, therefore I'm going to skip it. So we need one more thing. We need a while loop. So while true, and remember Python is very white space sensitive. We need to indent these properly. Then break. There we go. Now, as long as this thing is true, which it will evaluate forever, if read result is exactly equal to this sign, then it will continuously prompt to do this. So we'll actually want to move this down here as well. Now it will enter, it will continuously prompt, and we can take a look at what that would look like. We also do need to rename this to name, because we are going to do another while loop. We'll do a while true read result equals input what is your favorite food space. Oh, and you know what? I forgot my own advice up here. I forgot the space. And we can say if read result does not equal empty string, then we can do a match read result to case 1, or I'm sorry, not case 1, case cheeseburger. We'll do food. This is not efficient. I'm just showing you how it might work. What is wrong? Is it because I did this? There it is. Food equals read result. Break. Case nachos. Food equals read result. This is definitely not the most efficient way to do this. Break. And we can do default food equals, oops, case default, there it is. Food equals read result break. Now, I say it's not efficient because I can't obviously plan for any of the foods that somebody might stick in here, but I just wanted to show how the read result variable could be tied to use to filter after validating it. Right? And we could say otherwise, well, actually, we don't need an elf or an else elif here because it's just going to keep cycling, right? So now we can do name your favorite food is plus food. Now, one thing to note, read result gets overridden both times. So name is read result, and then I'm reprompting you to overwrite or to update the value of read result in this case. So you don't have to worry about there already being something in that container so long as you've done something with it. And this name is taking its value from read result. That's being copied into name and then stored separately. So if I hit F5 to run it, type your name, Coach T, my favorite food, glass. Greetings, Coach T. Your favorite food is glass. And you can see I messed up here. I forgot to do the separator the appropriate way. So it's a little bit goofy in terms of the syntax, but that's how we can read and write information right from the user, and you can validate it. If I run it again, and this time I try to be goofy and I just hit enter, type your name, type your name, type your name, I can still get away with that though, right? And my favorite food, slashes, right? And the program ends. So the validation loop basically just makes sure that you have to type something in. You can be as specific or as generic with that as you want. If you're wrapping it to an integer type, you could also validate it to make sure the type is an integer, a valid integer. That can also be used to control flow to make sure that you don't end up with an inappropriate value farther down the line of the program. But that is up to you. This video is really long, but I hope that this deep dive into the print and the input is useful to you in starting to understand how you can put together more complicated software from simple tools. So that's it. That's all from me. I don't know what the next video is at this point. It's a little bit jumbled. But if you have ideas or questions, put them in the comments below, and I will try to walk you through anything you've got questions about with the beginnings of Python. So I'm having a blast. I'm glad to have taught you today. My name is Coach T, and I will see you in the next one, hopefully.